Hi, good morning, everyone. So thrilled and honored to have you this year as part of Sedona Wolf Week 2021. Thank you so much, Catherine, for bringing us all together. And I'm going to turn it over to you to moderate this amazing roundtable, and then we'll wrap it up with some Q&A.
Right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the first panel of Wolf Week 2021. I'm Catherine Frizat. I'm a French-American wolf advocate, and it is my pleasure to introduce a presentation by the European Alliance for Wolf Conservation, EAWC. EAWC is a coalition of NGOs that advocate for wolf conservation and coexistence throughout Europe. Today's presentation is going to talk about the global issues of wolf politics, of course, and demonstrate that wolves and their advocates face the same challenges, whether in the US or in Europe. So, joining us today from north to south, we have, for Finland, Francisco Sanchez Molina of the Lonto Lito Wolf Group. Hi, Francisco.
Hello, everyone.
For Scandinavia, we have Anna-Karin Lieber of the Swedish Carnivore Association. Hello. For Germany, we have Peter Kiermeier, who seems to be missing. And for France, we have Eugene Reinberger of Ferris.
Good morning.
And for Spain, Mauricio Anton of Lobo Marley. So I will now hand it over to Eugene, who's going to do an overview of EAWC as a start. Eugene, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Let me share my screen. Okay, guys, can you see the wolf? I can't hear you, so I
Yes, yes, we can see it.
Okay,
we can.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Okay, 1 second. Yes. Okay, good morning, the America dwellers. Good afternoon, the Europeans. I'm Eugène Reinberger from France. I got to work as an engineer in the aerospace business, but fortunately I was able to switch to large carnivore conservation 10 years ago. Today I'm a member of the board of Ferus, an NGO, French NGO, advocating for lynx, bear and wolf conservation. And, I'm the representative of Ferus in our Alliance for the Wolf. First of all, we want to thank the Sedona team, yes, for the invitation to speak about the wolf in Europe. You will see that the situations between our two continents are different by nature and history, but wolf management systems show similarities. I hope we will be able to open up a fruitful cooperation between our NGOs in the future. Before I start the presentation of our European Alliance for Wolf Conservation, I'd like to situate the context of its creation. In Europe, the wolf is fully protected under the Habitat Directive of 1992, applicable to all European Union members, these are the blue ones, and by the Bern Conventions for those not in the EU. If you have to remember one thing about carnivore conservation in Europe, the Habitat Directive defines in detail what wolf full protection means in each state member, since protection level may be slightly different between countries. This measure, the Habitat Directive, had the effect to boost wolf reproduction and expansion, the wolf now slowly reoccupying its historical presence area. Situation is a bit different between countries, as you will see later in the presentations. But at a given point, due to increasing conflict with sheep farming, a general trend in countries where the wolf made its return was to allow more and more derogations to protection, understanding. Shoot wolf. In other countries, a growing and barely legal hunting industry put the survival of the species at stake. The same vicious circle repeats again and again between lax administration, anger amongst livestock owners, and prevarication of local politicians looking for votes, their message being, the wolf is not compatible with sheep farming, let's remove it. The objective of our coalition is for the natural expansion of a healthy wolf population in each European state member, and a focus on protection methods for better coexistence with sheep farming. Created in May 2015, in response to the threats we just described, we are in favor of a strict application of the protection laws, and we ask for implementation of protection methods rather than lethal control. In opposition to other lax European NGOs, our members share the same value. Lethal removal is not an adequate management tool and must be stopped. EAWC's founding members, as you can see, are Ferus, France, Lobo Marley, Spain, and Zoological, Portugal. Membership has increased over the year. In 2021, the Alliance includes 12 NGOs covering half of the European countries where the species is present. Our headquarters are located in Brussels with our Belgium member Natagora. You can see the logos here and the names of the NGOs. Some have difficult names. The Swedish, for me, it's not easy. And in green, the map of the Alliance countries. Finland, Sweden, Norway, Estonia, Denmark, Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, France, Switzerland, Spain, and Portugal. On the right side of this chart, you have the wolf presence map. And the estimated European wolf population is about 13,000 wolves. Alliance countries host about 4,700 wolves. You can see on this chart where the big numbers are. Spain with 1,500 wolves of the subspecies Canis lupus signatus, which have been isolated for over a century and are genetically distinct from other European wolves. Germany with 1,400 wolves, where the wolf is only returned in 2000 from Eastern Europe, Poland, and so on. In 20 years, they went from 0 to 1,400. For the moment, we miss some important countries like Italy, Romania, and Bulgaria. Our goals: to offer an umbrella structure to all European NGOs dealing with wolf conservation, implementation of livestock protection methods instead of lethal control, protection of a prerequisite, protection as a prerequisite before granting any financial compensation. This condition is currently bypassed in France, for example. Stop the use of lethal control as a management method and strongly prosecute poaching. Facilitate the natural dispersion between countries, not obstruct it. To put an end of inadequate derogation, and to obtain the famous favorable conservation status in all countries. Now, the Habitat Directive states that members must maintain or restore wolf population to favorable conservation status. FCS is considered achieved when there is positive population dynamics on a long-term basis, no natural range reduction in foreseeable future, existence of sufficiently large habitat to maintain species population on a long-term basis. In short, we want the wolf to fulfill its ecological role. Favorable conservation status is not reached in most of our countries, and we'll see why in the next presentations. Our actions. We benchmark wolf situation between countries and support NGOs struggling with inadequate wolf population management and hunting. We created an ad hoc group for Scandinavian cooperation that includes Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Finland, meeting with embassies on specific issues, distribution of scientific publications proving inefficiency of lethal control. For example, in this publication in the Journal of Mammalogy that you can see, contribution to local authorities inquiries on wolf management, for example, the inquiry made by the German state of Thüringen, monthly teleconferences, periodic meeting of all alliance members. Last meeting was held in Helsinki. And last but not least, lobbying with the European Commission. EAWC is now recognized as an official contact with the European Commission. During a recent conference, we reported 4 examples of inadequate wolf population management. The commissioner assured us of being in close contact with the relevant administration and said they are about to release an updated guideline document for derogations, a document published since that will be very helpful in the future. An example of recent lobbying. Facts. Denmark current Minister on the Environment, Lea Wermelin, said in an interview that she was in contact with other countries to examine the possibility to export wolves out of Denmark and regulate, shoot wolves. She mentioned collaborating with like-minded countries to put pressure on the European Commission to authorize liberal wolf management and to make wolf regulation, understand killing of wolves, easier. In a note to Parliament, she implied that the Habitat Directive allowed for the killing of wolves depending on wolf population size, a highly incorrect statement, and the wolf is strictly protected under Habitat Directive. Our reaction, the EAWC member Ulvetid of Denmark used the Danish Freedom of Information Act to request all notes, emails, to shed light on the minister's views regarding wolves and found the above note to Parliament. Ulvetid wrote directly to the NV committee in Parliament and corrected the minister's comment under the Habitat Directive. As a result, when asked to comment on Ulvetid's letter, the minister admitted that the Habitat Directive requires full protection for wolves and made no further mention of her personal views. Okay, that's it. Now I will hand it over to my friend Francisco, who will open up the review of 5, hopefully 5 situations in Europe. I switch off. Okay, Betsy?
Hello. So I guess I should go on. Hello, everyone, and thank you for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to be here with you. And I'm going to talk about our the work we did, an investigative report we did for the European Commission. Okay. Can you all see the presentation?
Yes.
Great. So here in Finland, we have the situation that many exceptional hunting permits are given to shoot wolves. It is thanks to the membership of the European Union that in Finland wolves are strictly protected, or at least should be strictly protected. But the legislation allows for certain exceptions to be made depending on very concrete situations, and these are called derogations. So if certain elements are present and alternatives have been tried, then it is possible for authorities to grant very exceptional killing permits for wolves. So we wanted to see if this was actually what was happening on the ground. We talked with the European Commission, and we had a meeting with them in 2017, and it was clear that they didn't have the evidence that the law was being followed in Finland. So we decided to take the matter in our own hands and make an analysis, an investigation of all the hunting permits that were being granted during a whole hunting year in Finland, and see whether the alternatives were effectively being used before trying lethal management. So we wanted to see if the law was being followed, not only in letter but also in spirit, because as Eugene mentioned, there are many different interpretations of the Habitats Directive. So different stakeholders, they have their own readings of the law. As you know, directives are a bit kind of wide in scope. They don't go too much into details of things. So it's very easy to have your own reading depending on your own particular interests. So it's very important to see what is the purpose of the legislation and to analyze if the decisions that are being made are made according to the direction that the law wants to go. So to give you an overview of the result, of the preliminary results, we on the hunting year of 2016 to 2017, there were roughly around 70 hunting permits, and roughly half of them belonged to the north part of Finland. And as you can see on the map, we have two different areas designated in Finland, and these are basically, according to European Habitats Directive, in the north, this is what comprises an area called Lapland. I'm sure many of you have heard about this area. It's considered kind of a wild area where reindeers are freely roaming. And the rest of Finland is considered, is called the southern Finland, okay? So these two areas have different legal obligations. In the north, in Lapland, it's, the law accepts the possibility of management hunting, okay? Of quotas for managing wolves lethally. And on the south, the situation is the one we were talking about in the beginning, which is strict protection. Okay, wolves cannot be hunted except under very, very particular, exceptional circumstances. So what we wanted to see was, in the case of southern Finland, if the strict protection was effectively being applied. Okay, so you can see how big Lapland is in comparison with the whole of Finnish territory. This is around 35% of the land, and here it's basically let's say a reindeer factory. Okay, it's an area where reindeer is freely roaming, and for this to be possible, predators are shot automatically. Okay. So many people think this is a pristine and natural kind of a wild area, but the reality is totally different. So in the results that we found in our analysis, where, as you can see, that most of the applications for killing wolves were done on the basis of reindeer damage, okay? And in contrast to what happens in the rest of Europe, which usually is sheep, the main reason, you can see that for Finland, that's not a really big concern. It's mostly reindeer, and between reindeer and deer, there is dogs, okay? So in Finland, we have the particular situation, which is kind of shared with it between all the Nordic countries, which is there is a hobby of hunting with tracking dogs, okay? And the way this happens is that the people who hunt, let's say moose, they release their tracking dogs freely in the forests, and these dogs can go many, let's say, hundreds or even kilometers ahead of the hunter, tracking the scents. And sometimes these tracking dogs, they run into wolves, and there is conflict, because as we all know, wolves are territorial animals. So hunters are pretty much the main opposition for wolf conservation in Finland and in Scandinavia, as you will hear also from my Swedish colleagues. And the rest of damage, as you can see, are pretty much minimal, okay? And there were even some license applications where there was no damage at all, okay? And this is where my next slide gives you the details. Pretty much all of the applications for southern Finland, they mentioned that they wanted to shoot the wolf because they had seen signs of a wolf, okay? So this means that people sometimes were claiming to have seen wolf tracks on the snow. Not even the wolf, just the tracks, the paws on the snow. And that was reason enough to go to the office, the regional office, to request a hunting permit. And also a big factor mentioned in the hunting applications was fear. People claim to be afraid of the presence of wolves in the area, in the countryside, and they think that is a good enough justification for shooting wolves, just being afraid of them. And this is a really big issue in Finland. It's the fear justification is being used a lot, and it's a psychological and subjective reasoning that is very hard to argue against. And people who happen to dislike wolves, the so-called wolf haters, they have realized that if they cannot argue for damage compensation or damage killing licenses, they can use the fear justification. And then you can see school transportation is also a big reason used for requesting shooting permits, and this is basically parents that are afraid that their children will be, that the kids will go into the mouths of wolves. They organize bus trips from homes to the schools, and these are called wolf taxis. Okay. So these are the main reasons, and then you of course have the damages to hunting dogs, which is the main 5 reasons. You can see damages to livestock are not on the same level of importance. Okay, so this was basically the main findings of our investigation, that fear was being used as the main reason for killing wolves. And we thought that was really not following the regulations, the European legislation. So the 3 reasons, to sum it up, the 3 reasons why wolves are killed in Finland nowadays is 1, because the reindeer herders, they want to keep the reindeer free, roaming in the pastures of the north of Finland. Okay. They don't want to be bothered about using preventive measures, not even livestock guardian dogs, okay? They don't want to change the way they have been doing things for many decades. And because killing wolves is very easy, you get the permits very easily, and also because you get financial compensations for losses to large carnivores, then there is now a vicious cycle, a vicious loop has been created where basically people are being paid for not doing anything, just killing wolves, killing predators, and keeping business as usual. So as Eugene said, one of the main proposals that we have is that compensation, financial mechanisms should be tied to the use of preventive measures. The second biggest reason is the concept of bold wolf. Okay, this is the concept that wolves should stay in the forests. They shouldn't be roaming around or near residential areas. If that happens, then it's considered an abnormality. It's considered an unnatural behavior, and they call it a bold wolf because it's used. This term is used in the research papers by some carnivore research platforms in Europe, and they call it bold wolf because it implies that when a wolf gets near human settlements, it's because he or she has lost the fear of humans, and that is something bad, and this wolf should be monitored, and if the behavior continues, should be killed. Okay, so this is a concept, a political concept. It's not based on real behavioral research or biological considerations. It's a political term that we should get rid of it. It's causing a lot of damage to the wolf conservation. And the third reason is the hunting hobby. And it's really unfair that because a small group of people, they want to continue practicing their unrestrained hobby of killing animals in the forest, then the wild animals should disappear. This is not a just situation for nature, and this has to end as well. So, in terms of results of the non-lethal applications that are being used in Finland, we can see that pretty much not too many are being used. Okay, wolf taxi, which is the school transportation for children, is mentioned the most, which is basically just taking people by cars to their destinations. And then hazing is mentioned. And around half of the applications, they mention that they try to scare off the wolves, but they don't say how, they don't say for how long, they don't say how many times, they don't say what were the results. The explanations are very, very vague. And in the very few of the applications, they mention electric fences. But we actually went to check some of those farms that mention or that claimed to have been using electric fences, and these are very poor fences, okay? Not enough wires, very, quite much space between the wires where any animal can just get through. So there is no control, no supervision of the preventive systems that are being used. And so, to go through quickly through my final slides, we propose solutions for moving forward with this situation in Finland, and some change is happening slowly, but we have seen positive signs of improvement. We advocate for developing a protocol for effective hazing measures. People don't know how to react when there is the presence of wolves. So there should be information and education giving out to people living in wolf areas of us how to behave and how to prevent that wolves are attracted to human settlements. And as we mentioned, the preventive measures should be always tied to the right of receiving financial compensation. Otherwise, you create a vicious cycle. And as the European Alliance value, we also advocate for an end of lethal management of wolves and other predators. Many studies, many serious research has shown that lethal management is counterproductive and perpetuates the view that hunting is a valid tool for dealing with management of wild animals. And lastly, but probably the most important, is to educate the general public about the ecological importance of wolves and predators for the ecosystems. Unfortunately, not many people know why we actually need these animals in the first place. People think that the role these animals have in nature can be done by humans, which is far from the truth. And because wolves have been eradicated for many years, decades, and even centuries in many countries from our landscapes, then we have forgotten how to coexist with them and why we need to coexist with them. So education is paramount to solving this conflict situation. So the report was delivered to the European Commission, and we launched it in a presentation in the European Parliament. And there was a very positive political change, and this was done in 2018. And after that, the political climate has been much more favorable to large carnivore conservation. We have a new European Commissioner, which is very much in favor of finding a solution. And nowadays, they are financing 100% of the cost of using preventive measures. So if you have to buy a guardian dog to keep your life, your farm animals protected, then you can get a refund of all the money you spend in the dog for food, for veterinary costs. From the Commission, they pay 100% of the costs involved of using prevention. And this is a really, really big advance. And so the European Commission, after we delivered our report, they visited Finland to talk with the relevant authorities. And they declared that indeed there had been many mistakes and shortcomings of the way Finland was dealing with wolves. And after that, the Finnish ministry in charge of wolf management drafted a new updated management plan. We were invited to as a stakeholder in the working group, to take part on the discussion. And nowadays, the situation is much more, let's say, all the stakeholders are more included in the conversation, and the situation is much more constructive than it was before, though unfortunately not perfect yet. So this is, in a nutshell, the Finnish situation. Thank you, everyone, and kiitos, which is thank you in Finnish. And I now give the floor to my dear colleague Anna-Karin Liber from the Swedish Large Carnivore Association. Thank you. You have to unmute yourself, Anna-Karin.
Corner of your screen and unmute.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, hello everyone. I am Anna-Karin Liber, I'm the Vice President of the Swedish Canyonware Association, who works for protection and conservation of the Swedish canyonwares, of which the wolves are the most endangered. We are working with information about wolves, and we are also helping the fences to protect the cattle and sheep. I want to thank you for the opportunity to present the current situation for the wolves in Sweden and Norway. In the picture you can see is a wolf in winter fur. The Scandinavian wolves are normally grey with brownish sides and legs, and they are darker on the back. The white part is around the mouth and cheeks, are typically with darker parts of the head. The Scandinavian wolves are quite big. They could be up to 90 centimeters in height and weigh up to 55 kilograms. They eat or feeding mostly on mooses and deers, but they also seems to take more and more wild boars, which are very good in Sweden. The wolves have been living in Scandinavia as long as the human race. We both colonized after the latest ice age about 10,000 years ago. They were spread out in the whole Sweden and Norway, except the island of Gotland. But about 200 years ago, they began to be hunted very hard, and in the mid-20th century, they was only seen highest up in the northern part of the countries. In 1966, they were finally protected by law, but then there was only a handful of animals left. Some years later, they were considered extinct. But in early 80s, there was reports of an reproduction again in Sweden.
Excuse me, I'm Karin.
Yeah?
I think you are not sharing your screen. I am not seeing your presentation.
Oh. I go back then and see if I can do something about this. I thought you were... Share. You see it?
Yes, you're good now.
You see the screen?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
I start perhaps all over again. What do you think?
Yeah, briefly, quickly.
Sorry for this. It's typical. Well, now I hope you can see it and you can hear me. Oh. As I said then, that this is a Scandinavian wolf. They can be quite big. They are up to 90 centimeters in height. They can weigh up to 55 kilos. And we have been existing together with the wolves in Scandinavia since the latest ice age. But they were extincted were declared extincted in about 1966. But about in the late 80s, there were also reports again for a reproduction again. And in the next centuries, this little fragile population grew, and it is the base for the whole Swedish-Norwegian wolf population of today. And this is also why the population are so inbreeding, because the genetics of the Scandinavian wolves is now known on individual level in a unique and almost complete family tree. This is similar to the situation for the wolves in the Isle Royale in North America. They were also isolated and were suffering from genetic inbreeding, which resulted in low productivity and low survival. The Scandinavian wolves are counted each year through tracking and drop-ins of the winter period. The inventory period are from the 1st of October to the 31st of March. And this is chosen because of the snow. It's easy to see the tracks in the snow. The latest period, it was a total of 48 family groups found in Sweden and Norway, where 39.5 families in Sweden and 8.5 families in Norway. It is half family counted when the territories are in the border between the countries. And you can see the distribution of the families in this map. In Norway, wolves are only allowed to live in a little zone called the wolf zone, which are approximately 5% of the Norwegian area. But in Sweden, wolves should be allowed to live in the whole country, except Gotland. But in practice, they are not allowed to live in the Alpine region, which accounts for more than half of Sweden because of the reindeer industry. The number of wolves found are then, wolf families found, are then multiplied by a factor of 10 to get the number of animals. And based on this calculation, it should then be 480 wolves in together for Sweden and Norway. But that is in the beginning of the inventory period, the 1st of October. So during the inventory period of the winter, many wolves are killed by license hunt, damage-preventing hunt, traffic accident, and other causes like illegal hunt. So in the end of the inventory period, when it's time for breeding, there are much fewer wolves left to breed, and probably low beside the minimum limit for favored conservation status, which are 300 wolves decided in Sweden. And that is if there are at least one immigrating wolf allowed to reproduce at least at once at the generation time, which are 5 years. And this is because of this bad, poor genetic status of the inbreeded and isolated population of this southern population of the Scandinavian wolves. But the chance for an immigrating wolf to get through the northern territories down to the isolated population are very low. Last winter, 3 wolves were known to pass from Finland over to Sweden at the border, but 2 of them were shot quite immediately, some week after they passed the border. And the 3rd one lived some weeks longer, but then disappeared. And this is because they are coming into the reindeer area, of course. So immigrating wolf have very low chance to get down to this isolation. And if no new immigrating wolf are coming down, it's decided that Sweden should have at least 1,700 wolves, which are said by a scientific report to secure a long-term viable population. Norway doesn't have decided any favorable conservation status yet, but they have a political goal of 40 animals. The Swedish and Norwegian wolf population are considered biologically the same, but they are not managed as one, as there are no political agreements on population goals or conservation aims. The wolves are listed in IUCN criteria as critically endangered in Norway and endangered in Sweden. They should be strictly protected against hunting by the European Union's Directive for Protection of Endangered Species in Sweden. But the political climate in both countries are negative for wolves, and hunting is allowed even if it's against the red list for protection and the EU directives. Wolves are seen as a problem, and the government are doing very little to create intolerance and increase the acceptance for the wolves. In Sweden, the hunting organization also are lobbying very hard for decreasing or even eradicating the wolves. The media are also making the situation worse by only reporting the problems. The threats for the Swedish and Scandinavian wolves are mainly 3. The first and largest one are hunting. Wolves are hunted by legal license hunting and in population limiting purpose, argued by the authorities for creating social tolerance and decreasing illegal hunting. But this is not substantiated by facts and are against the European Union's direct protection of endangered species. The coming winter, Sweden has decided to kill 33 wolves, and Norway plans to kill 51 wolves, which are 2/3 of the population in Norway. There are also a lot of wolves killed every year by so-called damage preventive hunting that are developed by the regional authorities for different reasons. Sweden and Norway are not used to wolves since they have been gone for quite a long time, and they are afraid and worried when they are seeing them on tracks of them. Like my friend in Finland said, the same there. And other reason can also be that the wolves are taking hunting dogs or cats or sheep. But this could be prevented and should be prevented by information about wolves to decrease the worry and by fencing the sheep in an accurate way. But last winter, 20 wolves only in Sweden was killed by those damage preventive hunts in Sweden. Inbreeding. The Swedish and Norwegian, I can say also that the illegal hunting are maybe the largest cause of hunting. And there are different studies telling that somewhere between 20% and 50% of the Swedish and Norwegian wolf population are killed by illegal hunt. But that is very hard to prove since the crime are taking place out in the wilderness. But inbreeding, the Swedish and Norwegian wolf population descends from only 5 individuals, actually. And they are more related than siblings. The inbreeding factor of 0.23. Genetic inherited defects from the 5 founders of the population are sooner or later becoming homozygote, meaning that the animals have 2 genes with the same defect. And for example, in the last license hunt, over 40% of the male wolves were showing cryptorchism, with the meaning that one or both testicles were remained in the abdominal cavity. And this impairs also the reproduction significantly and is a serious threat for the whole wolf population. Other defects are also seen like bite defects. And the third threat are the reindeer industry. Reindeers are kept throughout the northern half of Scandinavia and blocks the passage for immigrating wolf to reach the population in the south. Wolves are not allowed in those areas where there are reindeers, and they are shot in damage preventive hunt when tracked or seen by reindeer spiders. Sheep are held in the same way, and they are grazing freely without fences, except in the 5% in the southeast, what's called the wolf zone. Wolves outside this zone are shot. It is very strange that Sweden and Norway, 2 other countries in Europe with most wilderness and lowest population density, should have so few wolves. In Sweden, the resistance comes mainly from hunters, since the wolves compete for the mooses and other ungulates. Wolves might also take hunting dogs, but that is actually not that common. Many hunters also think it's exciting and fun to hunt wolves, and many hundreds of hunters are registering every year for a chance to join the wolf hunt. Even foreign hunters are trying to get a license for hunting Swedish wolves. And the hunters are allowed to keep the skins from killed wolf, which also makes this a trophy hunting on an endangered animal. Another resistance comes from sheep owners, since wolves also take sheep now and then. But there are good possibilities to protect the sheep for fences, and the Swedish Carnivore Association helped to put up the fences for free. And they are also provided grants by the Swedish authorities for the fences. So that should not be a problem, actually. Another way for protection is to keep shepherd dogs, but this alternative is made very difficult in Sweden by the regulations. A special exemption is needed for keeping those dogs. But the final and most difficult resistance comes from the reindeer industry. The reindeers are not fenced. They occupy actually more than half of the Swedish region. And wolves are not allowed to settle here, and they are killed more or less instantly when they are discovered by the reindeers herders. Finally, a newly published report from the Swedish Agricultural University showed that nearly 70% of the people wanted to have wolves in the same number as today or more. Only 12% wanted less wolves or no wolves. So the wolves has a broad support from the Swedish human population. This should reflect in the political situation if we had a true democracy. The same is also true in Norway. But despite this, the politicians are more willing to listen to the few percentage that do not want to have wolves. This is very strange, actually. But we hope, and at the will of the people in Sweden and Norway, together with the legal protection by law, we finally change this resistance from the policymakers toward a more positive view of the wolves. was all from Sweden. And thank you for listening. So now I hand over to my German friend, Peter Kiemeyer.
Well, hello everybody. With a warm welcome from Germany. Hope everybody can hear me and can see my presentation. Thank you. Sorry for being late on this meeting, but nice guys are always late. So, my name is Peter Kiemeyer and I represent the largest wolf conservation organization of Germany, the Friends of the Free Living Wolves. It's my pleasure now to spend a few words on the fascinating story of the return of the wolf to Germany after almost a century of absence. In a nutshell, here in Germany we deal with the Eurasian wolf Canis lupus lupus, which is already familiar because Anne-Karin Lever already described this fascinating animal, whose range extends from eastern Siberia across the European part of Russia to Scandinavia, and across eastern and southeastern Europe into Central Europe. Normally wolf territories here are about 150 to 350 square kilometers in size, depending, of course, on the food supply. An adult wolf needs about 2 to 3 kilograms of meat a day. And its natural diet here in Germany consists mostly of ungulates, roe deer, for example, and of wild boars. We have quite a lot of wild boars here in Germany, and the hunters cannot cope with all this steadily increasing animals. Now, the wolf itself plays an important role here in the ecosystem by preventing a too high population of ungulates and, of course, wild boar. A role that nowadays the hunters claim to have taken over, but as I already said, they cannot really cope with such a large amount of animals. Wolves do not distinguish between wild and farm animals, which set their fate in recent centuries. Now, unfortunately, the story of the return of the wolf to Germany begins with the extermination of the wolves in Germany. And this story already begins in the age of the Emperor Karl the Große. Oh, and I just learned that in English, Karl the Große is called Charlemagne. Okay. Already in 1813, the emperor decided to exterminate the wolves in Germany, which were already then causing great damage among the livestock, grazing unprotected in the woods and meadows. This law, each count in his role as a landlord, had to employ 2 so-called lupari, or wolf hunters, professional wolf hunters, who received a share of grain harvest as wages. Even if humans do not normally seem to fall into the normal prey spectrum of the wolf, wolf attacks on humans also occurred and are historically documented. The largest number of wolf attacks could be traced back to rabbit wolves. Victims were primarily adults caring for the animals, domestic animals, out in woods and meadows. The victims of predatory attacks were mostly children, also assigned with the job of protecting the domestic animals in the woods, and to a lesser extent, women. Now, have a look at what the normally well-renowned and famous naturalist Alfred Brehm wrote in the 19th century. One has to get accustomed a little bit to the wording. In the last century, the harmful predator was not lacking in any large forest area of our country, in the 19th century. And even in this century, thousands have been killed here according to official data. Due to the strong persecution of the wolf population steadily declined and reached its lowest point in the 19th century. Around 1850, the last evidence of a wolf pack in Germany disappeared, and the last single wolf was shot in 1904. Many regional memorial stones commemorate the shooting of the last wolf in a given area and bear witness to these occurrences. Now, talk about the return of the wolf to Germany. Unlike in the United States with the Yellowstone or Idaho wolves, active reintroduction of wolves, and also unlike bears and lynx, was never really considered in Germany. Persecuted for centuries as a pest, it was placed under protection after its disappearance in Germany and in large parts of Europe. And
Peter, if I may ask you something, can you
yes,
share? Can you put the presentation in full screen? Because
it seems to be in full screen, to me at least.
Should not.
Okay.
I think it's full screen.
It should, at least on my screen, it is full screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Mine too.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
Does it
Thanks.
look good now?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. So perhaps nobody really expected the return of the wolf to Germany. All the more exciting was the independent immigration of wolves into Germany after the German unification, when the Iron Curtain finally fell. A significant milestone was the establishment of a first family pack in Saxony, in the eastern part of Germany, in the year 2000. This area is close to the border with Poland, where indeed the first wolves again came over from Poland. Starting with this first pack, further packs established themselves in the immediate vicinity and settled in the following years in adjacent federal states. On a small map presented on this slide, you can see that the first movement started indeed in the east from Poland, moving to northwest. Interesting, not, or to a lesser extent, to the west and southwest and to the south. And there's almost nothing coming over from Czechoslovakia. It was noticeable that the spread was mainly in the German lowlands, in a northwesterly direction, and that the low mountains were rarely, if at all, settled. In Germany, it is above all active and disused troop training sites on which packs have established themselves. There, they were least disturbed, and the wolves that settled there were often raised themselves on troop training grounds. Well, one somehow expects it. Germany is well known for its bureaucracy, and there you'll find the wolf in the thicket of paragraphs. With a multitude of laws, directives, ordinances, regulations, but never forget, there is no hunting of wolves in Germany. The pioneer with bureaucracy and ordinances was the state of Brandenburg, which is the most wolf-populated state in Germany. The Brandenburg Wolf Ordinance regulates, among other things, the scaring away of wolves, the scaring away of wolves with conspicuous behavior, and the killing of wolves with problematic and aggressive behavior against humans. In addition, detailed rules are laid down for the removal of wolves and for the identification of wolves of suitable persons who may carry out the removal of a wolf. It is also required that hybrids between wolf and dog be taken in the wild by the authority responsible for nature conservation and landscape management. Now, derived from the data from the monitoring year 2019-2020, there are currently about 128 confirmed wolf families or wolf packs here in Germany, plus about 35 non-reproducing pairs and about 10 individual single animals. Different sources estimate the total number of animals in the range of about 1,300 to to 1500. A continuous further increase in the number of wolf territories is expected. A current estimate of the potential number of wolf territories in Germany assumes 700 to 1400 territories, with an average territory size of 200 square kilometers. These, in principle, offer room for the corresponding number of packs. So one can easily say the wolf has returned to Germany to stay and to resume its important role as part of the ecological system. So thank you. Thank you for your patience, and I'm handing back to France, I think.
Thank you, Peter. Very interesting.
Thank you, Eugene.
Okay. So, do I have the lead to share my screen?
Looks like I do have still.
Did you quit, Peter? Yes.
Yes, I hope so.
Okay.
No, we're still seeing your screen.
You're still seeing my screen?
Yes.
I cannot yet.
Here we go.
Eugene, yours, I think.
I think it's good now.
I think it's yours.
Good now. Try again.
There you go.
Okay. So here we are. Let me full screen. Where is full screen? I don't understand why I cannot see. Cannot activate the full screen. Blah 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 blah.
Eugene, we need your headset.
Yeah, okay. Let me 1 second. I realize I cannot activate my full screen. So, okay, well, see if it goes later. So, this is Eugene again, and I must say, after speaking after Peter, I'm quite jealous with the situation of the wolf in Germany compared to France. So now we go to the wolf in France. So during the 18th century, a country like France was the perfect place for wolves. Population estimation ranged between 10,000 and 20,000 wolves. Organized persecution, especially disappeared during the 1930s, and in the French Alps, the species had disappeared 30 years ago. So the first confirmed observation was made in 1992 in the Mercantour National Park. Okay, I think I put my helmet to improve the sound. Thank you, Catherine.
Yeah, much better.
And in France, wolves were not reintroduced. They came back naturally after spreading to the French Alps from the Abruzzi Mountains, central Italy, over a period of 20 years. And this return was due to multiple factors. Since I have to speed up, you can see the factors here. I won't read them. So the average size of our French-Italian wolf, sorry, because I have a small wolf that picks me up here, and I have to tranquilize him. So 1 meter 10 in length, height between 65 and 75 centimeters, weight 25 to 35 kilograms, and fur color quite common to other European wolves. On the left, this is the 2020 permanent presence zone map. So wolf, as you can see, wolf crossed the Italian border in 1992, first colonized the French Alps, where the main packs live. The black marked wolf figure are the packs, and the gray marked the isolated wolves. In 1994, the first dispersers started leaving the Alps. These wolves were able to move across populated areas, large transportation infrastructures. They crossed urban districts, highways, canals, and the Rhone River, the Blue Line, the most important natural obstacle before Massif Central. 30 years after the first confirmed observation, dispersal reached all neighboring mountains, Vosges, Jura, Massif Central, Pyrenees. And it's amazing to see how different from Germany, where the wolf mainly spreads to the plains. Also, there is no biological reason the species would remain confined to the Alps. The map shows, right here, the map shows an anomaly. In 2020, no pack presence in the Pyrenees or in the Massif Central. An analysis showed that all wolves present in France are of Italian origin. So here's a picture of two wolf presence zones in the Pyrenees. The first is the nature reservation of Pi, in the Eastern Pyrenees, where two, maybe three wolves of Italian origin roam between French and Spanish Catalonia. Second is the Jaut grassland in the Western Pyrenees, where some predation on sheep occurred. Only one male disperser of Italian origin is confirmed in this area, a proof that the wolf is able to move from Eastern Pyrenees to Western Pyrenees on 400 kilometers distance. As I mentioned in the introduction, the species is strictly protected under the 1992 Habitat Directive. Consequently, the French government is legally obligated to ensure its full protection. In 2021, population estimate range between 500 and 700 wolves, 125 permanent presence zones, 106 packs. All of the reproducing packs live in the Alpine region. Amazingly, after 30 years of presence, there is no known reproduction pack outside of the Alps, except two trans-border packs with Switzerland in the Jura Mountains. In 2004, facing an important predation rate, 20 sheep by wolf by year, this is Europe's highest rate, the French government began using a provision of the Habitat Directive, which allows lethal removal of a limited number of wolves under specific circumstances, significant livestock losses amongst others. But over time, this policy evolved into a systematic killing of 100 wolves a year. In absence of damage, even in absence of livestock, and also during boar hunting season. Now, population annual growth has drastically decreased from 22% to 8% due to lethal removal, intensive lethal removal, keeping the species status as vulnerable, so no favorable conservation status. 118 wolves can legally be killed in 2021. Ferus has engaged legal action against this policy, which we consider is a breach of the Habitat Directive. As of today, 96 wolves have been killed in 2021. The last chart, an example. While the French government relied only on the killing of random wolves to mitigate predation, a strategy proved inefficient. A cannabis survey performed by IPRA, an independent organization, showed that in the French Alps, interactions between wolves and flock of sheep are complex. During the 2013-2018 period, 3,300 hours of night survey with thermal cameras were performed in the French Alps. The big surprise was to see that in France, wolves live in the pastoral space and frequently visit the pastoral system. We had 530 sequences involving wolves, 175 interactions observed between wolves and protection dogs, only 65 predation, 12%. And of these, 30 predation with success, I mean killed sheep, 40% success for the wolf. Contacts between wolves and sheep are constant, but in 50% of the cases, wolves show no interest in the pastoral system. This is what the night camera has shown. It was made clear that predation is only the visible part of the iceberg of wolf-pastoral system relation. The study identified the existence of subgroup of wolves living their lives at the edge of the packs. This may be the reason for the high predation rate in France. Finally, the guy with the cameras, they observed many things. They observed a large variability in wolf characters, from the curious wolf, the suspicious, the timorous, the player, follower, the leader, wait and see, unskilled, the courageous, the reckless. The wolf doesn't exist. There are many different types of wolves, and really setting up an efficient protection system implies to take the wolf parameter into account too. In other words, you've got to know your own wolves. Was it for France? So now I will hand it over to my friend Mauricio, who will speak about the wolf in Spain.
Okay, thank you, Jean. So I am Mauricio Anton. I am Vice President of the Spanish NGO Lobo Marley, and I'm going to talk to you about the wolf in Spain. So, can you see my slide?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So the wolf that we have in Spain is part of an isolated population that has been living here south of the Pyrenees Mountains for many centuries, and some scientists call it Canis lupus signatus. Some specialists think that it doesn't have the subspecies status, it's just a local population, but it is morphologically and genetically different from other European wolves. So it's a relatively small wolf, it's dark and reddish in color, and it is a very efficient hunter, and it has been the natural controller of wild ungulates in Spain since the end of the Pleistocene, because back in the Pleistocene, there were many other large carnivorous species. Here in Spain, we had the cave lions, cave hyenas, leopards, but all those big predators got extinct about the end of the Pleistocene, leaving only the wolf as the dominant predator. And it has been here in Spain without interruption. So it never got extinct. There was never a return of the wolf to Spain. There was never a reintroduction. So in spite of its adaptability, its great adaptations to changing environments, the wolf was almost led to extinction by human pressure. It was persecuted as vermin and this led to a dramatic population decline and range reduction between the 19th and mid-20th century, so that by the 1970s, there were only 500 wolves or less surviving in Spain, most of them cornered in the northwestern region. And not only were the numbers of wolves reduced, but also their genetic diversity. So there was a very strong genetic bottleneck, and we are still suffering the repercussions of that bottleneck. And so if things would have continued that way, the wolf would have gone extinct in Spain as it had gone extinct in France, in Germany. But then in the 1970s, the species was removed from the vermin list, and it became a huntable species. And ironically, this was what allowed a gradual recovery of the population, because there were regulations, there were limits to how and when people could kill wolves. And then, when Spain joined the Union, we found was protected all through Europe through the Habitats Directive. And the Spanish government had to decide what to do with its populations of wolves, and it put the majority of surviving wolves, those on the western part, under Annex 5, which means that they could be managed and, in practical terms, trophy hunted. And that only worked north of the Duero River, as you can see in this map. So south of the Duero River and in the eastern part of Spain was strictly protected under Annexes 2 and 4. No. And over the years, there was a recovery. Now we have about 300 packs of wolves in Spain. And this has been the situation for several decades, so that we see that something is not working because the wolves are not really returning to their original habitats in the center and east and south of Spain. In fact, the population got isolated in the southern part of Spain. They got extinct within the last few decades in spite of full protection. So what was actually happening is that there was a wall of preventing the natural return of former range. Part of the problems that have prevented the wall from recovering in Spain is the interest of the government in inflating the estimates of wolf numbers in Spain. I mean that governments want to pretend that there are more wolves than there actually are in order to keep the business of wolf hunting going. Have some 300 and 500 dying, being killed each year due to causes. And for all these years, the government kept ignoring some of these factors like poaching and accidents in order to keep the hunting high. Our organization, it was necessary to provide full protection in the whole of Spain, not only south, but also north of the Douro River, in order to achieve a real positive conservation status and a recovery of the population. And our arguments were simple. First, that trophy hunting and lethal removal are actually breaking pack structure in the wolves and rendering less efficient in killing wild prey. So this is actually generating more conflict with livestock owners, because these fragmented groups of wolves actually kill more livestock, because that's the easiest prey. And also we have noticed that the old argument that allowing the killing of wolves their image in the face of society is not true. So that in fact, by hunting and the government is contributing to the image, and if we give it full protection, people will start seeing the wolf as a problem and even harmless. For several years, our organization has led a social campaign in favor of wolf protection and hunting ban. And with time, other large environmental NGOs joined the campaign. They participated with us in large-scale demonstrations with tens of thousands of people demanding strict protection for the wolf. And this finally gave fruit. So in 2019, the Spanish government started the process of wolf in the list of species with special protection, which implies a hunting ban. Finally, the 23rd of September of 2021, the new regulation was finally published in the official bulletin of the state. So we are now celebrating this success for the wolf conservation in Spain, but we also need to review the plan, because that hunters will fight the legal battle to try to reverse the situation. But still, I want to end this presentation with you short video showing something that is very rarely seen, which is the natural behavior of wild wolves in their natural habitat. These rare images were filmed by a naturalist friend of mine, and you will see young wolves, very playful animals, enjoying themselves in the mountains of northern Spain. And we hope that in the future, such young lives will continue to maturity without being by a bullet. So, thank you very much. I leave to my colleague to play the video.
Yes, Betsy, can we play Mauricio's video now? ago, yeah, somebody was surprised of using the term of wolf taxis, and also we were wondering what's the current situation? Has there been a political change? Is the situation currently positive or negative?
Well, the current situation is developing in a very worrisome direction, because the ministry just announced a few days ago that they want to bring back quota hunting of wolves, and this would go definitely against the European legislation and the purpose of the Habitats Directive, which is to ensure strict protection of wolves in Finland. And the proposed quota is 20 wolves for this winter, but this would be on top of all the derogations that we talked about, covering damages and fear of people, and also doesn't include the killings done by the police on very kind of special situations. The police has also the right to shoot wolves if they come near people. So in general, the direction is not good, and we hope that the European Commission will take a role in this situation and stop the aims of the Finnish ministry.
Okay, yeah, let's hope so. Anna Karine, yeah, we kind of have the same issue in all the different European territories, similar problems, and in Scandinavia, wolves are strictly protected by law, but still they can be hunted. So how is this even possible legally?
So in Sweden, we should be following the European Union's Directive Habitat for protection of animals, but there are a way of getting around that, because national countries can take away some animals, problem animals, but in Sweden they have managed to get this to be a license hunt for hundreds of yellow animals, or at least now 33 this year. But we are appealing as that, and we have appealed and are trying to get Sweden to the Court of European Union about this, because we think it's illegal. So it is not to the law, we think, but they are still doing.
Okay. Now for Germany, for Peter. So there's it was a big recovery of wolves in Germany, and what can we say? What are the threats to wolves in Germany currently? Are there any threats?
Yes, of course. More or less the same threats as everywhere. We have, of course, a strong hunting lobby. We have, of course, a lot of poaching. We have a lot of politicians that want to soften the regulations and laws for protecting the wolf. And yeah, it's not so pronounced as maybe in other countries, but of course we still have the same threats, and we also have the usual suspects. You let me say it in these words.
Yeah. Okay. Eugene, for France. So it seems in France that wolves are kind of isolated in the Alps and although they disperse, but they never establish packs in other regions. Do we have any idea why that is?
Well, the authorities are watching very carefully every predation outside the Alps, and basically at the first predation event in a department outside the Alps, they decide to fire wolves. And the most sad story is that we
we sometimes speak about genetics, and for example, so far the French, Italian wolves are isolated from the German, Polish wolves, for example. And last summer, the first German wolves crossed the French border and came to us. He did some predation in the Marne region, and after 2 weeks, the authorities decided to kill him. And that was so sad because it was the first wolf in France with German-Polish breed. So that was an occasion to favorize genetic exchanges that was missed. So basically, we don't know when PAC will be established outside the Alps, but clearly the authorities don't help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's like, a government issue as always. And then, for Spain, we had a question that it's great that there is a hunting ban. We wish that was the same in other countries. What was the public's reaction, the media reaction, and then I'm sure the hunting lobby's reaction was certainly not positive.
In fact, the so-called wolf problem is something that is fed by the media at a local and regional level. So at the national level, everybody is happy that the wolf is protected. And when you see the news say on the TV news report at the national level, the coverage is positive to neutral. Okay, the wolf is protected, so now it won't be hunted, and this is seen by some parts of society with caution because what will happen to the livestock owners and so on. Then when you go to the regional and especially the local media, they have a much more negative view of the subject. And so they say things like, this is going to be the end of the rural world. There is going to be impossible to make a living as a herder or as a farmer because it will be wolves everywhere. And so this different approach of the media is mirrored in the approach of the politicians. Because even in the same political party that is ruling national in Spain, the regional and local governments are rebelling against the national government of their own party. So they are taking the national government to the court, trying to claim that this regulation to ban wolf hunting is not fully legal, hoping that it can be
returned.
Yeah, but the fact is that the government, the national government, has taken good care to wrap the law very carefully so that it is not easily vulnerable to these attacks from the anti-wolf sectors.
Okay.
So we are confident that it will resist, but certainly there are minorities that are not happy with this. And on the other hand, the local governments will always try to read the law in a subjective way, trying to justify cullings and quotas for population control. And they have been doing this south of the Duero for all these years, where it was already fully protected and it was illegal to kill it. So it is the same drama as elsewhere in Europe. these exceptions or derogations are used too liberally and in a way actually contrary to the law. So that we can expect that that will keep happening. So it's
Okay.
still going to be conflict, but we will be there.
Okay, great. Well, we are out of time. It's to thank everybody for participating to this great panel tonight. And we learned a lot, I'm sure, and everybody in the US has probably seen that they're not alone fighting all these wolf issues, and that we hope that we can all unite wolf lovers around the world to fight in our own respective territories. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.